Welcome to a spooktacular day. It's Akatatoma numbers 31st. October 31st. And, yeah, it's what we commonly call Halloween. Ooh, the spookies are everywhere. Help us, please. Yeah, okay. Well, listen. We've got ourselves some wonderful information today to share your way, and hopefully you'll stick around. Put your seatbelt on, maybe a helmet might be useful. We're going to speak about Halloween. Yeah, we're going to talk about Hallows Eve, Samhain, and we want to kind of put a perspective to it, of course, with a reasonable mind, so that you and I can know, as Christians, what's this Halloween thing all about? Must we, take out the holy water and throw it at everything, including the little spooky goblins running around the neighborhood asking for candies? Or can we sit back and know that there is no fear to be had regarding this here now westernized culture of this Halloween activity? And I think it would, of course, help ease our conscience and amplify our faith, more so, greater, moving forward, understanding the boundaries and what is permissible. And you and I know scripturally that some things are permissible. Don't make them wise. But some things are permissible within the freedom we have in Christ. Some things are not. There are boundaries in our freedom and liberty. There's great responsibility with freedom and liberty. We kind of miss the mark on that one these days in our current generation, right? The age of lunacy. Well, we're going to put up an article on the screen. You and I will read through this article to go back to its roots. Where does Halloween come from? The Samhain. We want to see the organic distribution of its material. Where on earth did we have the idea? Where did it come from? Why do we carve pumpkins and dress our little kiddos and all sorts of different things and ask for candies? Why is this a thing? Where does it come from? I want to look at some of that. And we will also look at an article from our dear friends over at ChristianCourier.com regarding Christians and holidays and can we participate? Share the link far and wide. Others out there might want to tap into the substance of the information we share. Yeah. So consider subscribing, following, liking, start a thread. Say, hi, how's it going today? My name is Stéphane Maillet. Yeah, that's a French name. Stéphane Maillet, and my website over here is addedsouls.com. I labor alongside the East Coast Church of Christ over here on the East Coast of Canada, and you can check out the .com. I encourage you to check out the .com, East Coast Church of Christ.com. If you'd like to visit with us, have studies with us, it's available to you. A loving, kind, growing, forgiving congregation you'd love to get involved with. A new chapter in your life, perhaps, right? Okay, so Halloween. First and foremost, of course, we go to our interview mode. Ding, ding, ding. There we go. And the scripture's on the table there. What is it? Isaiah 41:10. A principle therein says, fear thou not. Fear thou not. What you acting all scared for? What's the matter with you? What you getting up all on your anxieties for, man? Chill. Fear thou not, for I am with thee. The great I am, the Ancient of Days, the intelligent engineer, the creator, the great power that has set forth all good things upright in motion. Be not dismayed. Don't be found in doubt or confused, for I am thy God. Ownership, I will strengthen thee. You will have courage and strength. Yea, I will help thee. The utility of service is at your freedom. Yea, I will uphold thee. You won't fall. With the right hand of my righteousness. What is right? The governed will of his covenant. In principle, my dear friends, we need not fear anything. Fear thou not. Stop being scared of all these things. We don't have to be scared. God's with us. Now, of course, I would encourage you to go to that chapter and to the book and read and understand the context they are in, but the principle is indeed the message, and that's something. That's pretty cool. So let us together here read an article. This is from blogs.loc.government. So it's a government thing, because the government wants to tell us where things come from. And sometimes you can, trust the information because you can investigate the history and see for yourself that, yeah, okay, that's accurate. Sometimes not so much. So by all means, do your own research. And maybe your research has come up saying, well, there's a few different things here and there. Well, that's all right. That's perfectly fine. That's what we do together. We talk about these things, right? Yeah. Okay, so Halloween. The Pensacola Journal. Pensacola, Florida, October 29th, 1922. Man, that's what, 102 years ago? Or something like that? Yeah. Okay, so carving pumpkins, trick-or-treating, tick-a-teet, and wearing scary costumes. Scary, of course, is subjective. Some of us find things scary, and some of us don't find things scary. Let me tell you something about being scary. I am the father of 3 children, husband of 1 wife, and I've seen my little children sneeze at the table while eating spaghetti. Ain't nothing you can do or say gonna scare me, brother. You ain't gonna scare me with nothing. I've seen children sneeze at the table while eating spaghetti. Ever seen spaghetti go in the mouth and come out the nose? Man, oh man. Okay, let's keep going here. The article continues. And wearing scary costumes are some of the time-honored traditions of Halloween. Yet, the Halloween holiday has its roots in ancient Celtic festival of Samhain. Samhain. Celtic festival. You guys know Celtic Frost? You should check out that band. Enter at your own risk. So, what's going on then? Of course, a Gaelic word pronounced Samhain. Sahwin, and I'm probably not pronouncing it properly. I'm a French Acadian, speaking English words. So it says it's a pagan religious celebration to welcome the harvest at the end of summer, when people would light bonfires and wear costumes to ward off ghosts. Ooh. In the 8th century, Pope Gregory III designated November 1st as a time to honor saints. Soon after that, All Saints' Day came to incorporate some of the traditions of Samhain. The evening before All Saints' Day was known as All Hallows' Eve. And later, well, what you and I know, Halloween. Here's a look at the origins of some of the classic Halloween traditions we know today. There's an image here of a jack-o'-lantern, a pumpkin who's been traditionally carved, with the triangle eyes and nose and the whatnot. There's little kids in there poking out. Los Angeles Herald. That's an image from October 30th, 1910. Wow. Been around for a while, hasn't it? Yeah. Hey, man, let your comments be known in the thread section. What's your thought on Halloween? Have you had fun? Do you have memories? Were you a little kiddo running around saying trick-or-treat, getting candies? What was it in your household? Or was it completely non-present in your upbringing? So let's keep reading here. Carving jack-o'-lanterns. What's that all about? The tradition of carving jack-o'-lanterns originated in Ireland, using turnips instead of pumpkins. We go in the field and pick up the potatoes. It's Ireland, I tell you. It is allegedly based on a legend about a man named Stingy Jack. Oh, Jack, who repeatedly trapped the devil and only let him out or let him go on the condition that Jack would never go to hell. Well, that's spooky stuff, isn't it? But when Jack died, he learned that heaven did not want his soul either. so he was forced to wander the earth as a ghost for eternity. Oh man, that's scary. The devil gave Jack a burning lump of coal and a carved-out turnip to light his way. Locals eventually began carving scary faces into their own turnips to frighten away evil spirits. Oh, we are a superstitious people, are we not? We believe these things, many of us, for many years. My culture and kind, the French Acadian people, we believe all kinds of stuff. We're very, very superstitious. Superstitious people. But of course, the power of the Christ called us out from that fear. Called us out from that fear, that web of fear. And, now, we don't fear these things. It's interesting. I find this very interesting. I don't fear those things anymore. Ain't no evil spirits of the sort. Ain't the devil and turnips going on over here, brother. Well, let's keep reading, though. Oh, there's an image of a child carving out a pumpkin. Cool. That's an old one, too, I suppose. Yeah, 1915, October 24th. In Pumpkin Land, the jack-o'-lantern is still the symbol of Halloween. The New York Tribune, October 24th, 1915. That's a cool image. I like that they put images like that, too. Kind of travels back, man. That's 100-plus years ago. Just like yesterday. What about seeing ghosts? Because that was the pumpkin carving thing. Well, what about seeing ghosts? Have you ever seen a ghost? Have you ever seen ghosts? Well, of course you've not seen ghosts. Let me tell you something about ghosts. Because, of course, of my culture, my kind, my upbringing, we were persuaded into that element, that realm. And it's a strong, sensational delusion of sorts, if you will. You can activate your mind to see things that aren't really there before you, or imagine things. And as a kid, I'm telling you, I saw ghosts. I saw one once entering my room. I saw one under my bed. Really, I did. And the one under my bed, it grabbed me. It did. It grabbed me. I'll never forget that. It stuck with me. Because it has to be real. I must have experienced those things. I saw it. I really did. The ghostly shadow of a figure at the door. I used to have night terrors as a child. And they were as real as what I see before my eyes this day. Again, the persuasive element of the mind can truly captivate you in all sorts of departments and fields. Now, in reality, in the sober truth, in the objective, absolute, sober truth of our existence in this current age and era, right now, here and now. I mean, as a child, did I really see ghosts? No. But I told myself I did. Things are powerful in the mind. You got to be careful with that stuff. Again, that's where we find liberty in Christ. He calls us away from that snare, if you will, those uncertainties of the mind. What if it is true? I mean, I watched the movie The Exorcist when I was a child. It was quite traumatic. I thought that was real. So what do you think happened? I thought I was going to get possessed by the devil. Nah, man. Stop worrying and don't instill that fear in your children. Make them stronger than that so they don't succumb to things, fears that we need not succumb to. So, okay, let's keep reading. Isn't it fun? Share the link far and wide. Others out there might want to tap in. Seeing ghosts. So, the festival of Samhain marked the tradition or the transition to the new year at the end of the harvest and beginning of the winter. Celtic people, well, they believed that during the festival, spirits walked the earth. Later on, Christian missionaries introduced All Souls Day on November 2nd, which perpetuated the idea of the living coming into contact with the dead around the same time of year. You'll see, of course, or perhaps recognize that there is a similar agency of these beliefs in pretty much all the holidays. Also, would you know it, as called the days of the week: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and birthdays. Don't we like to practice birthdays? Birthdays are fun, aren't they? You know what we do at birthdays? We have balloons, we have gifts, we have cakes, we have candles, we have the ritual of singing certain songs. Happy birthday to you. Where do you think all that comes from? Why do we call our weekdays Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? What was that TV show we used to watch way back when? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Was it Happy Days? I forget how the song goes now, but yeah. Think of those things, man. Come on, reason with me, brother. Stick around. So, which perpetuated the idea of the living coming into contact with the dead around the same time of year. There's an image there of an individual and a ghostly figure coming out of the tomb. Oh no. This, of course, was from the Morning Times in Washington, D.C., October 25th, 1896. We go way back over there. 1896. What about wearing scary costumes? What's that all about? Well, in order to avoid being terrorized by all the evil spirits walking the earth during Samhain, the Celts donned disguises in order to confuse the spirits and be left alone. Well, yeah, that makes sense to me, right? It's camouflage. It's camouflage. You're going into a deep hunt. The game is active. Well, you are in camo so that you can navigate to the game and bring home some yummy meat. Or what about if you're a soldier on a mission? You got the camouflage on? Yeah, the enemy won't see you. Interesting, isn't it? So we are wearing costumes so that the spirits, they won't identify us. That's pretty cool. Look at that. Look at these images. Man, those images were way more scarier than what they got today. Halloween, in retrospect, the Farmville Herald. November 8, 1960. Oh, we're not going too far back there. Yeah. What about trick-or-treating? Where does that come from? Where does trick-or-treating come from? Stick around. We're going to read another article afterwards. Scripturally, of course, pointed to, so that you and I as Christians can know there is no fear in these holidays, but at least the agency is there for your conscience. We'll read through it. Be a reasonable person. Be a reasonable, approachable person. Be balanced. You know, let me share this. Bit of an excursion, all right? Do you know what makes the congregation here, the East Coast Church of Christ, growing? God, of course. It's God's work. Obviously, it's nothing I'm doing. I have a hard time putting my pants on right in the morning. It ain't nothing about me. God's work is active. God, His church. He's growing His church. Well, we're just participants. We've been blessed to be participants. So we serve. We serve the souls God brings to His church. And He is growing His church. You know why? Because we, as servants, we're like-minded in common salvation, Jude 3. In like mind and judgment. Paul speaking to the Corinthians, remember? Like mind, the same judgment. In other words, we do not loose the doctrine of Christ, nor do we bind law where no law is bound. And so, a flourishing, strong congregation growing forward for God is one in which we have similar scruples, matters of conscience, opinion. The more we have in common, like-minded in judgment, the more we grow forward, the stronger we be. And understanding holidays is a profound topic for Christians to learn and agree with so that we can flourish together and not be found hypersensitive, self-righteous, heavy-handed. That doesn't bring growth. That doesn't bring growth. Okay? The Pharisaical ilk of the brotherhood, they may know the law and they may be scholarly, but they don't know love. They don't understand compassion. And so in the agency of their faculty, their mind, they think it righteous to create more law and bind it on people and forcefully do so. Nor should we swing the pendulum too far and become the Sadducee and start loosing the doctrine of Christ to the point, of course, our brains fall out of the container. We don't want to do that either. So a bit of an excursion if you are seeking a practical application to how can we grow our local assembly. Number one, understand that you ain't the one bringing the growth. God is. You are simply a servant to that fact. Number two, don't make lines in the sand where God never made a line in the sand. Just don't do it. Creating a burden. You may come from a culture that is different than the culture you are currently living in, so on and so forth. Cultures change. Don't utilize that. Don't utilize what you experienced, how you grew up, in order to bind a law that God never bound. Be open. Be willing to recognize that we have liberty in Christ in a great many things, and that we need not fear a great many things that perhaps the world wants us to fear. Trick-or-treating, the article continues. There is much debate around the origins of trick-or-treating, but generally there are three theories. The first theory suggests that during Samhain, or Samhain, Celtic people would leave food out to appease the spirits traveling the earth at night. Over time, people began to dress as these unearthly beings in exchange for similar offerings of food and drink. That's an interesting one. That's pretty cool. So the second theory speculates that the candy boon stems from the Scottish practice of guising, which is a secular vision or version of, quote, souling. During the Middle Ages, generally children and poor adults would collect food and money from local homes in return for prayers for the dead on All Souls' Day. Geysers dropped the prayers in favor of non-religious practices with the inclusion of songs, jokes, and other tricks. A third theory argues that modern American trick-or-treating stems from, oh boys, let's see if I can pronounce this, Belsnickeling. There's a word for you. Belsnickeling. Hey, kids, stop that belsnickeling. A German-American Christmas tradition where children would dress in costume and then call on their neighbors to see if the adults could guess the identities of the disguised. In one version of this practice, the children were rewarded with food or other treats if no one could identify them. And there's a picture there. We got ourselves a little pirate. And, what's this little fella? Look at that. Innocent little creatures having fun. There he is. He's got a patch on his eye. He's a pirate. Arr! I don't know what the other guy is. He's Robin Hood, perhaps, or some sort. He's got like a bow and arrow there. Maybe he's Robin Hood or something. Trick or Treat Evening Star, Washington, D.C., October 26, 1952. That's a cool image. You can see all these things and read through this article if you want to over at blogs.loc.gov. There's another image of these little kiddos, all kinds of little kiddos. You got Zorro over here. You got yourself another pirate. You got yourself a lion, a skeleton. I don't know what that is. A funny ghost, I think. Oh, and we got ourselves Donald Duck over there. Trick or Treat, Evening Star, Washington, D.C., October 28th, 1962. Isn't that cool? I think it's pretty cool. So, black cats. What about that? What about that portion of it all? The black cats. Well, the idea of being spooked by black cats dates back to the Middle Ages, would you know it? And when these dark felines were considered a symbol of the devil. No way. Why is that? Why do we do that? We create these things, don't we? We're like, oh no, spooky stuff. My wife used to have a black cat. And in French, his name was Noiro. Which I suppose if you're going to translate it in English, it would be Blackie. Blackie, because it was a black cat. Noiro. Noir. That's the that's the French word for black. Noir. Noir. The night is noir. black. And, I hate cats, and I hated the cat, and I found out it did indeed have 9 lives. Shh, don't tell my wife. And after a while, though, I fell in love with the thing, and it would cuddle near me and, purr, 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 and do all that kind of stuff. But it would wake us up at 3 a.m. in the morning by jumping on my head and running in the house. And, crazy cat. And then I found out I was allergic to cats and stuff. And, but there you go. There's the short story of it all. Black cat. Let's keep reading here. Where were we? Yeah, here we go. It didn't help that centuries later, accused witches were often found to have cats, particularly black ones. And, okay, this brings a thought to my mind. Here's why we should not fear these things. Here's why we should accept the fact that we have freedom in Christ and we need not fear what the world fears. We just don't need to. Man, we ain't even supposed to fear death. Why on earth are we fearing little children and ghouls and ghosts coming to the door for candies? Okay, listen. We ought not fear these things. We don't need to fear these things. Because if we fear these things, there's danger there. There is danger there. People who fall prey to the sensational fear of the world, who think it true and real, they're going to act upon their delusion and hurt people. We don't want to do that. That is why, at times, within the deceptive web of denominational doctrines and traditions and shrines and all of those things, at times it can be very dangerous. If a population, a community, is fully convinced that the woman at the end of the road is a witch, we must remove the evil spirit. We must burn her at the stake. And then individuals of the world say, and that's Christianity? I don't want no part of Christianity. Look at them. They're burning human beings alive because they think they have evil spirits. That's how dangerous it is if you succumb to the lunacy and delusion of fearing things that just aren't real. Truly, they aren't. This is just a fantastical myth of sorts. God calls us away from that realm so that we can see it for what it truly is. It's just entertainment. It's just fun for the kids. Don't fall prey to that. That's how important this is, really. You have the Department of Tyranny that threatens human life in godlessness, because in godlessness there's no right or wrong. So therefore, men make themselves out to be their own gods and destroy humanity. And there's also a very real component of threat for human life in those who claim to be believers or Christians who believe in all kinds of nonsense. Don't do that. I know I used to be there. But the more you study the Bible, the more it sobers your thoughts. The more it challenges you to change your mind and your beliefs. And it calls you away. It withdraws you. It distances you from illogical fears. That truly, again, you don't need to go to bed tonight and fear you're going to be possessed by the devil or possessed by a demon, okay? It's not going to happen. Really. It's just Hollywood. It's just movies. You don't need to fear those things. You don't need to fear that you're going to see a ghost come out of the wall. It's not going to happen. All these extravagant departments of entertainment, the paranormal, the superstitious, it's not real. It really isn't. And that's why there is no tangible evidence ever provided in a court of law. Okay, it's not real. It's smoke and mirrors. It's illusion. It's just there to entertain you. So stop fearing those things. All right, bit of an excursion. We're going to keep reading here. I'm going to keep reading the article. It didn't help that centuries later, accused witches were often found to have cats, particularly black ones. So imagine that. People were literally harmed because of people's fear of things that just aren't real. People began to believe that the cats were a witch's familiar, supernatural entities that would assist in their practice of dark magic, and black cats and spookiness have been linked ever since. Here's an image here of Halloween. Of course, there's the witch with the black cat on the broom. That's where it comes from, right? Halloween, Evening Star, Washington, D.C., October 27, 1912. 1912. Isn't that something? That's pretty cool. So what about black and orange? Because that seems to be the traditional colors, right? Yeah, the traditional Halloween colors of black and orange also traces back to the Celtic festival of Samhain. Looks like if it's the Celtics that brought all of this stuff around. For the Celts, black represented the death. Well, I kind of figured that one. The death of summer, while the orange symbolized the autumn harvest season. Well, that makes sense. You know, the color of the autumn leaves. Yeah, okay, I get where they can, they came up with that. That makes sense. Yeah, okay, I get that. Yeah, sure. What about bobbing for apples? Now, we never did that. I never did that, but it was a thing in our communities. You would have activities. In our community, you had one church. You had one belief system. It was the one that everyone participated with. Everyone in the community had the same belief, the same church. It was one Catholic church. The Catholics gave us food, they gave us education, they gave us our community. And we would have these holidays, customs, and traditions. And there was a community center next to the Catholic Church. And so the community, all the families, we'd gather and participate in these activities. And part of the activity, of course, in the Halloween season was bobbing for apples. Now, I never did that, but I saw it, experienced it. It was a thing. It happened. But it was interesting, no doubt. Again, if you're seeking to understand a culture, understand the culture for the purpose of reaching them with the gospel. You can't reach people if you can't understand them. If you're not down to earth to speak to them and be approachable to them, you will never be productive. Again, we have to kind of learn the balance of it all. There's a reason Paul said that we need to learn how to speak with the people, right? We need to eat and understand their culture. We need to eat what they eat and speak how they speak. And I'm not speaking about foul language or speaking the way the world speaks. I'm speaking like, okay, if you're speaking to a truck driver, well, how can you, you need to understand the language of a truck driver, not the foul language part. That's not what I'm saying. Do you understand what I'm saying? You have to relate to people. You have to understand where they come from to be productive. So bobbing for apples. The game of bobbing for apples has been a staple at Halloween parties for many years, but its origins are more rooted in love and romance. Isn't that something? Interesting. The game traces back to a courting ritual that was part of a Roman festival honoring Pomona. Well. I didn't know that. The goddess of agriculture and abundance, I'm sure. The Romans, they lived with all sorts of gods, just kind of like the Egyptians as well, I suppose. So while multiple versions existed, the gist was that young men and women would be able to predict their future relationships based on the game. And when the Romans conquered the British Isles in 43 AD, the Pomona festival blended with the similarly timed Samhain, a precursor to Halloween. Isn't that something? There are individuals in the image there with an apple in the mouth. Well, it's not in our generation. They got suit and ties and dresses. They're actually modest. What do you know? Yeah, there it is. The custom of bobbing for apples. Nogles International, October 28th, 1939. Remember when clothes were in style? I remember that. Today, our fashion is called naked. Okay, what about pranking? Oh, yeah, pranking. Toilet paper on the trees. Playing pranks often varies by region, but the pre-Halloween tradition known as Devil's Night is credited to a different origin depending on the source, of course. Some say that pranks started as part of May Day celebrations, but Samhain and eventually All Souls Day also included good-natured mischief. When Irish and Scottish immigrants came to America, they brought with them the tradition of celebrating Mischief Night as part of Halloween. Yeah. There you go. You see in this image here, organized mischief. What are they doing? Organized Mischief, Evening Star, Washington, D.C., October 28th, 1951. What about lighting candles and bonfires? For much of the early history of Halloween, towering bonfires were used to light the way for souls seeking the afterlife. It's the portal. It's the portal, I tell you. And it's interesting because in our culture over here, of course, it was something you would see quite often during Halloween. You'd have fires. We would have fires. In my past life, we would embrace all of these, of course, not in the upright manner, sadly, but we would have huge fires. We'd participate in all sorts of activities that involved, of course, narcotics and alcohol and, all those things that, as a Christian now, we don't participate in because, well, there's a lot of destruction there. However, if you take those elements away from it and you just look at what is not sinful within the practice, making fires was indeed a part of what we would do. Some, of course, would take it too far, and what was quite often the case is that they would burn tires. Man, have you ever seen a tire smoke? Ugh. It'll engulf a community with a stinky smell. Okay, so for much of the early history of Halloween, in regards to lighting candles and bonfires, let's put up the article here again and read with it. Towering bonfires were used to light the way for souls seeking the afterlife. These days, lighting candles have generally replaced the large traditional blazes. And there's an image, of course, of what seems to be a woman lighting a candle in a mirror and then seeing the soul there or something. Maybe a long-lost love or a husband who has departed. Who knows? Things like that. This is from the San Francisco Call, October 29th, 1899. We move forward. It says, what about candy apples? For centuries, people have been coating fruit in syrup as a means of preservation. But during the Roman festival of Pomona, the goddess was often represented by and associated with apples. Her name derives from the Latin word for apple, pomum. Pomum. The French word, coincidentally, for apple is pomme. Veux-tu une pomme? Veux-tu une pomme? That means, would you like an apple? Now let me speak it with the slang of my culture. Aimerais-tu d'avoir une pomme ou quoi? J'en ai une coupe ici, tu t'en veux. Veux-tu une pomme? And then someone would say, c'est pas une pomme, c'est une pomme. C'est pas une pomme, c'est une pomme. I just spoke some slang, French, Acadian stuff for you there. But the French word for apple is pomme. P-O-M, pomme. And the fruit, or let's keep reading here in the article, and the fruit is at the heart of the harvest celebrations. It is believed that candy apples were invented accidentally in 1908 by William W. Kolb, a candy maker in Newark, New Jersey. As the story goes, Kolb was experimenting with red cinnamon candy to sell at Christmas time, and he dipped apples on sticks into the red glaze and put them in his shop window to showcase his new candy. But instead of selling the candies, he ended up selling the apples to customers who thought they looked good enough to eat, and they became fashionable treats for Halloween starting in the early 1900s, and they remained popular up until the 1970s. And therein you see an image here on the screen of those candy apples. Candy Apples, Evening Star, Washington, D.C., October 28th, 1956. We move forward in regards to bats. Bats. I immediately think of Ozzy Osbourne eating bats every time I think of bats. Or Billy Bats over there in Goodfellas. For those of you who just know what I just said there, welcome to the trivia. Okay, bats. Bats were likely present at the earliest proto-Halloween celebrations, not just symbolically, but literally. As part of Samhain, Celts lit large bonfires. There's those Celts again, man. That's where it all comes from, those Celts. Those Philistines, which attracted insects, of course, which in turn attracted bats. Soon spotting bats became connected with the festival. Medieval folklore expanded upon the eeriness of bats, with a number of superstitions built around the belief that bats were harbingers of death. Yeah, of course. So there's the image, of course, of the bat and individuals with the bat taking place here. And this was the San Francisco Call, October 29th, 1899. What about devouring candy? Where did that come from? What's that all about? Devouring candy. Well, the act of going door to door for handouts has long been a part of Halloween revelries. But until the mid-20th century, the treats children received were not necessarily candy. Things like fruit, nuts, coins, and toys were just as likely to be given out. Trick-or-treating rose in popularity in the 1950s, and it inspired candy companies to market small, individually wrapped candies. Like, when you walk into Walmart now and wall after wall after wall of these yummy, scrumptious, sugary things. People began to favor the confections out of convenience, but candy did not dominate at the exclusion of all other treats until the 1970s, when parents started fearing anything unwrapped. We began that whole thing, right? They'll put dynamite in your children's candy, be careful! And here's an image, of course, of an advertisement of candy. You got Hershey over there. You got the big guy. Look at that. 24 bars for 93 cents. Oh, man, we got to say something about that, can't we? Come on. Come on. What happened? Where did that go? I want 24 chocolate bars for 93 cents. What happened there? Let's go back to that. We got to find someone guilty of this travesty that today you'll have 24 bars for $930. Yeah, okay. So there's the advertisement for what's going on there. M&M's by the pound, 66 cents. Oh, man. Where did we go wrong? I can tell you where. I'm not going to do it, though. So treat them right. Don't be tricked. Evening Star, Washington, D.C. The image is from October 24th, 1962. What about candy corn? Ugh. Not that stuff. Do you like candy corn? Let us know there down in the comment thread. Do you like candy corn? Do you eat candy corn? I see candy corn all over the place. I can't stand candy corn. Candy corn's evil to me. I still believe that. Evil spirits are in candy corn. I'm firmly convinced there's evil spirits in candy corn. I mean, just look at it. It's just looking at you evil. Like, do you like candy corn? We might not be friends. We may have to put a line in the sand. I'm going to miss some of you. I'm sorry. I just can't be friends with you if you like candy corn. Of course, I'm being humorous. I'm just joking around. Okay, so candy corn. It says, a candy maker at the Wonderly Candy Company in Philadelphia is sometimes credited with inventing the tricolored candy in the 1880s. False. Philadelphia. False. I know who created those things. Demons did. But candy corn did not become a widespread sensation until the Goelitz Company brought the candy to the masses in 1898. The culprits indeed. How dare they? Candy corn was originally called chicken feed. Yeah, well, I can see that. And it's sold in boxes with the slogan, something worth crowing for. Isn't that something? I believe it. I believe that. Initially, it was just an autumnal candy because of corn's association with harvest time, right? That makes sense. Candy corn later became Halloween specific when trick-or-treating grew in popularity in the U.S. during the 1950s. And here is an advertisement for Halloween candy corn. 3-color, natural sweet honey, butter flavor, creamy and delicious. False. As natural looking as real corn. Pound size. Standard low price, 21 cents. Oh, man. I wouldn't even pay for that if it'd still be 21 cents. They can't give it to me. It couldn't be even freely given to me. So the image is from Halloween Candy Corn, Evening Star, Washington, D.C., October 28th, 1951. What are some other Halloween traditions that you enjoy? Share them in the comments. Maybe we've missed a few, right? Maybe there's a few things here we've missed. But that was a pretty extensive list there that dealt with a lot of the things, of course, I grew up practicing. And in our culture, we embrace this activity. We embrace this seasonal time. It certainly does have a wind. It has a spirit. It has a thought. It has a memory. It is filled with the nostalgic tradition of its kind. And if you're seeking to reach people like me with the gospel of Christ, you kind of need to speak our language. If you put up a wall and you start to high-handedly condemn in self-righteousness our worldview, our practices, how we were born and raised, I mean, there's not gonna be a building bridge here to the gospel. Got to understand these things. Now, of course, there's a boundary to that. We will speak of those boundaries. We're going to go to the article now from our friends over at ChristianCourier.com, and we're going to read an article in regards to holidays and Christians. Christianity and holidays? How does that work? Friends, please consider subscribing, liking, following, share the link far and wide, drop a comment, let us know what your thoughts are, or even just to say hi. And always remember, please kindly consider supporting me and my family and the material we provide as we labor along the East Coast Church of Christ. Please consider supporting it. This is how we survive. Through His good grace, your willingness to support. You can do so by sending stars. 100 stars is $1. You can sign up to addedsouls.locals.com and you can support us there monthly. You can also send a donation through PayPal, addedsouls@gmail.com. If you'd like to have a physical address, just reach out to me. I'd be more than willing to share a physical address. It's an opportunity your way. We have to raise a certain amount for us to go into the next year and have food, shelter, and clothing. And when food, shelter, and clothing is provided for, we can focus on the mission. That good? Okay, just had to plug that in there. So, ChristianCourier.com, our dear friend Wayne Jackson, may he rest in peace, he has departed to his eternal rest, has written an article in regards to Christianity and holidays. Now, he will speak, of course, in a general to the holidays, but Halloween is certainly part of the holidays. So let's read together and see what he has to say here. Is it wrong for Christians to celebrate some of the holidays popular in our society? In other words, wrong, would it be sinful? Now, sinfulness is lawlessness, and lawlessness, well, that stops us from going to heaven. There's a difference with sinfulness stopping us from going to heaven, and perhaps at times wrong in the eyes of man, or what man would consider wrong, which is subjective more so times than not. So just a thought there for you. Is it wrong for Christians to celebrate some of the holidays popular in our society? Some, like giving gifts at Christmas time? Is that wrong? Allowing children to go trick-or-treating at Halloween? Is that wrong? Or hunting eggs at Easter? Is that wrong? And when we speak of wrong, do we define it as simply something unwise that we wouldn't do? Or is it truly an inherent sinful activity which would stop us from going to heaven? Well, in considering this issue, several things should be kept in view. Okay, if we are honest, humble, reasonable Christians, a practice may have originated under certain circumstances, like we read in the other article where all of these practices come from, but eventually have lost that significance, either in whole or at least significantly. There's a Bible precedent, of course, for dealing with this principle. The Bible has the answers to everything in life. It really does. We just have to pay attention to it and to look at the details therein of the principle. So consider the practice of eating meat that had been sacrificed to idols previously. A very lively issue in the first century. It was a thing. Like, that's what they were having a conversation about during certain times in certain locations, was the food previously sacrificed before idols. Well, here is the background. A meat sacrifice would be made to an idol after a certain portion was consumed in sacrificial flames or by the priests, and the balance would be sold as common food in the market. So the controversy, of course, therefore, arose Is this meat contaminated simply because it had some connection with an idol? Let me say this. Let's do this. You come over for a meal. I'm practicing hospitality. I'm not a Christian, though. I'm a pagan. And the hamburger I'm going to provide for you as a meal, yummy, tasty, scrumptious hamburger filled with the juicy tenderloin. Well, I sacrificed that animal previously to my gods for their favor. And then I cooked a meal for you. Well, are my gods real through the perspective of Christian reality? Are my gods real? Like, is the little statue of Buddha a true divine entity? Well, of course some believe so, no doubt. But as Christians who have been liberated from the realm of deception or lies or things like, well, you and I know that the truth, which sets us free because it's reality, and reality sets us free from the bondage of delusion or illusion or lie or whatever. Well, you and I know it's just a little statue thing men made. It's not a real God. So if I've sacrificed the cow to my gods, are my gods real? Are they truly on this earth, and do they truly hold any power? No. So eat the hamburger and enjoy it. What are you fearing for? Right? I mean, think of it, really. If I say, you've been cursed by the power of Buddha, or you've been cursed by the power of my gods, the Nile god has cursed you, what are you going to start doing as a Christian? Oh, no, what am I going to do? I can't sleep at night. I better go see a priest. I mean, I've just been cursed by the Nile god. What am I going to do? Well, of course not. That would be falling prey to fears that truly are non-existent once you've been liberated by the freedom and power of Christ. Can we not be balanced? Can we not be reasonable? Can we not be approachable? Can we not communicate with people and understand this? It's a very balanced truth. Why do we, and it's almost as if at times we make our feelings to fear the idol in our lives. I don't want to let that go. I prefer fearing and believing it's true when it isn't, because you may have become or may have created your fear in thinking it's true, your idol. And the idol is in between you and God. Let the idol go and go straight to God. We don't need to fear these things. Okay, so let's keep reading here the article. Is this meat contaminated simply because it had come some connection with an idol? So Paul's answer is no, obviously, and you can see 1 Corinthians 8, verses 1 through 13 for that. If one has knowledge, quote-unquote knowledge, in other words, that an idol is nothing, and his conscience is not offended, he may eat of that meat. It is not contaminated merely by its former association. It just isn't, because there are no gods that we need fear. We need to fear the living God, the one and true, unique God. That's the one we should fear. Okay? It continues, yet there is still caution. There is still a boundary. As I've been saying from the very beginning of this session, there is still, indeed, a boundary. If one is in an environment wherein some, quote, weak, in other words, more tender, without mature knowledge, brother, is liable to be damaged, then it would be best to refrain in that instance, lest the weak brother's conscience be wounded. In other words, the brother's soul is more important than the meal. Now, that doesn't mean we are going to remain submissive to his fears, his weaknesses, his tenderness to that issue in immaturity, but we are going to give him a time a timeline. Okay? That's important. Someone says, I fear all those holidays. They're all pagan. They're all idolatrous. And as a Christian, one cannot participate in those things because he or she might come from a certain worldview or a certain culture that would ingrain or have galvanized that persuasion in his thought, his worldview. Well, you and I, having matured out of that realm of fear, knowing and discerning the difference, we should have patience and suffer long and love our brother and give him the time to learn. Let's give him or her the time to learn. Now, there will be, of course, an expiration date to that, in which enough evidence and honesty and education had been provided. And if he or she continues in self-righteous indignation towards it, then they may force a withdrawal. They may force a withdrawal. And some brethren go all the way with that, sadly. And they become divisive over it. And they create divisive agencies because of their own personal fears and weaknesses and scruples. And what happens, and it is my opinion to this end, they fall prey to emotional loyalties to their fear of it. Again, like I was saying, they make it their idol. To fear those things and to make it a hobby horse to condemn everyone who practices the things that they fear. And sadly, what they do, and I've been guilty of this, is they will pluck out certain verses in the Bible out of its context completely and formulate this thought, this worldview, this interpretation that is foreign to the Bible and say, here, this verse says we have to stay away from all those things. No, it doesn't. No, it does not. Got to be careful with that. Got to be careful with those things. And those are the very things that push people away from the gospel. Really. So we have to be careful with that. Okay? The article continues and says, it would be wrong to partake religiously of a practice that compromises one's fidelity to the truth. A religious practice that would violate the doctrine of Christ. In other words, if you start to entertain or believe in denominational doctrines that there is no uniqueness to the Church of Christ, there is no uniqueness to the plan of salvation he set forth, there is no uniqueness to the method and pattern in which we are to worship him in spirit and truth, there is no uniqueness to the utility of discipline within the church, there is no uniqueness in the management of a local congregation with elders and deacons. Like, if we depart from the pillars of truth and doctrine of Christ, that's a problem. That's a major problem. Okay? Let's keep reading here. The apostle deals with such a matter in 1 Corinthians 10. If in a service where sacrifices were being offered to demons, the Christian were to partake, in other words, have communion, koinonia, participation, fellowship, with those involved in the illicit worship, such clearly would be sinful, no doubt. Chapter 10, verse 20 and 21. That would be a problem. That would be a problem. If you find yourself on Saturday at the temple with the prostitutes and the priest, and then on Sunday morning with the church and the brethren, we got a problem. So to practice Christmas, Halloween, Easter religiously would be unwarranted. In other words, if we make it out to be an idol practice, and when I mean idol, I don't mean vain, I mean idolatry, idol worship. To do so merely as a cultural custom would be a matter of personal judgment. And therein is the balance. And therein is our approachability to the fallen world as we love our neighbors and seek their well-being spiritually. We have to understand this. To practice Christmas, Halloween, or Easter in an unrighteous religious element would be unwarranted. It would not be permissible. Now, to that end, and we will have ourselves a session, of course, dealing with Christmas when the time comes, but let me put this thought in your mind briefly as a bit of an excursion before we continue with this article here. What if, this is just the what if realm, and the what if realm can be useful in our faith if it's done upright and righteous. What if I would choose, with my wife and children and my parents here, on Christmas Day, to thank God in prayer and give Him praise and devotion for the many blessings that we have? The family, the food, the shelter, the clothing, His church, our friends, and what? Is that a religious practice taking place from me and my family on December 25th? And does that inherently make it sinful? What do you think? We're going to talk a bit more about that when the session comes along regarding Christmas. Because again, if we find ourselves in an element of self-righteous indignation, we may create laws that hinder the church more so than edify and build and grow. Just a thought. Bit of an excursion in regards to Christmas, but we'll come back to that when the time comes. So to practice Christmas, Halloween, or Easter religiously in an unrighteous manner would be, of course, unwarranted. So to do so merely as a cultural custom would be a matter of personal judgment. In Romans chapter 14, which of course some of you would know we would endeavor, Paul argues the general proposition that there will be different levels of knowledge among brethren, and that, to a certain extent, these must be accommodated for the sake of Christian unity. It's all about unity. That is why the Bible condemns, at a great many locations, a divisive individual. A divisive individual is going to do everything he or she can do to cause faction, and that is indeed sinful. There is, of course, and we've spoken of this, righteous division done by the hand of God through His gospel. But this is not what we are speaking about. We are speaking of unrighteous, divisive individuals who would utilize these things for their own selfish ambition, or again, they make it their idol in their life, the hobby horse, to cause a faction and friction and division. For example, some, out of conviction, choose not to eat meats. Others see nothing wrong with such a practice. Yeah, if you're a vegan, you're a vegan, all right. I mean, I think you're missing out in life, but hey, we're still friends. But if the vegan says, that's it, this is it, this church can no longer eat any meats, it must become vegan because I'm vegan and vegan is the right way, and meats are sinful. Well, we're going to have a problem. You're going to have a big problem. Okay, let's keep reading. The apostle instructs that neither individual is to set at naught the other. Now, that is the unity that we should uphold. And if we love each other more, if we look for the greater good in each other, come on, guys. That's where truly it stems in the motive of the heart. If we are truly looking for the greater good in each other, if we truly love one another, have compassion for one another, if we are selfless towards one another, thoughtful towards one another, we're going to do what's right to keep the unity. Now, we must not succumb and become submissive to a tyranny of sorts. But if it is mutual, if both of us love one another and seek for the greater good in each other's lives, we will indeed find the unity. Okay? That's very important. Again, someone says, how is it that the East Coast Church of Christ is growing so rapidly? Well, there are many elements to it, of course, but it stems from God. It is God's work. We as servants serve, and we are blessed to participate in the servitude. And within our servitude, we seek each other's well-being. We seek to be united. In a congregation governed by corruption and divisiveness, you will find chaos, because in its corruption, it will create disorder. It will create disorder, condemn disorder, cause faction and fraction, and divisive elements will take place where the innocent and the honest and humble are pushed away, and of course the delinquency is devoured. And it can take place in many facets and many branches of topic, and one of them, of course, at times is holidays. Let's not do that. Let's not do those things. Let's not fall prey to those things, okay? No man is to create a law in areas of expediency and then demand that all others submit. If an overt act of transgression is not the issue, peace must prevail. Peace must prevail. If my children like to dress up as superheroes or little ghouls and ghosts or whatever, and yours do not, because you do not permit that, let's seek for the unifying element together, remaining in fellowship and honoring each other's conscience. Now, would we be stronger to have the same like-minded judgment? Yes, we would. And that is what we strive for, and that is what we are creating here with the East Coast congregation. However, if that cannot be attained at this hour, and it is something that would come with further education in the months and years ahead, then at this very hour, we must look to the greater good of each other's soul. Because again, we're trying to help each other make it to heaven. So it must prevail. Okay, if an overt act of transgression is not the issue, and it isn't in regards to holidays, then peace must prevail. Most folks who are rather sensitive about these cultural practices are not consistent entirely in their own conduct. They just aren't, and I wasn't either. And I spoke a bit about this on one of our previous sessions this week regarding our Tuesday Analyzing the Lyrics session, where we spoke about, of course, Michael Jackson's Thriller song and video. When I was in the infancy of my faith, returning towards Christ in 2011, I became enamored with many weaknesses and tenderness within my faith. I would, of course, believe that Harry Potter and watching Harry Potter is sinful because Harry Potter is the occult, it's Satanism, it's bad, it's evil, it's filled with evil spirits, and Christians shouldn't watch those things. And I offended many of my brethren who at their time had matured out of that element, but they suffered along with me, and they were like, oh, okay, Stefan, sure. But we have to progress out of that element when we educate ourselves with the principle of the Scripture. Harry Potter... okay, is not the devil. But I was firmly convinced it was. But it isn't. In reality, it just isn't, and it's not something we should fear or would have need to fear. So, again, I was found with many inconsistencies in my faith. Watching Harry Potter is a sin, and if you watch Harry Potter, you're damned. But let's have ourselves a festive holiday or birthday, or again, there's a contradiction of will when those things happen. So consider, the article continues, our friends over at ChristianCourier.com. Consider, for example, the celebration of birthdays. Yeah, I figured he would go there. In ancient Egypt, the birthdays of the pharaohs were considered as holy days, with no work being done. Okay? Moreover, as John Lightfoot noted, quote, the Jewish schools esteem the keeping of birthdays as part of idolatrous worship. And this as early as 1979 here written. Does that make us, as Christians, participating in birthdays sinful? Like, are we now pagans, Egyptians, Romans, Gentiles, Greeks? What? Heathens? Because we practice birthdays? If we practice an inconsistency in our faith in such ways, I assure you the world is turned off by that, because they know it. They see the hypocrisy of it all. They do. So you condemn all of us for having a Christmas tree in the house, but yet you practice birthdays, which in some cultures and in some historical locations, that was found to be more pagan and idolatrous than a Christmas tree in the house. The world sees the inconsistency of it all. I assure you, I cannot stress this enough. Dear brethren, I love you. I truly do. Liberate yourself from the inconsistencies of your conscience. Liberate yourself and fear no longer these things. You will find a balance, and you will become productive for God. I assure you, you will. And you'll start to notice the local assembly growing, and you will witness baptisms and renewals as we have been. And you'll start to recognize that Christians will separate themselves. They'll withdraw themselves from toxic locations to find spiritual refuge with your local assembly. Have a balance, okay? Now, does this mean that if a man in this era gives his wife a birthday present, or if we have a birthday party for a child, we have compromised our faith? Well, surely no one will so allege such a position. Yet they do so in hypocrisy if they set forth a law that God never bound. And for that matter, are you aware that a wedding ring? Have you ever thought about that? Where does the wedding ring come from? Do you wear a wedding ring? Are you a pagan? Are you a heathen? Are you an idolater? Because you have a wedding ring? Think of those things, man. Let's be balanced here. So what about the man who takes his wife out for dinner and gives her flowers at Valentine's Day? What about that? Has he yielded to the Romish dogma regarding Saint Valentine? When we place flowers on the graves of our loved ones, is this the same as the Hindu practice of putting food on the graves of one's ancestors? Does having a wedding ceremony in a church building imply that we endorse the Catholic notion that marriage is a church sacrament? Surely these queries must be answered negatively. If we are reasonable, honest, transparent, sincere students of God's law and principle, His love and mercy, then we know the answer to those questions. Practices can change with time and mean different things to different people, no doubt. We must not compromise the truth. That cannot be done, but neither are we permitted to make spiritual laws for others. Again, falling prey to the Pharisaical way. We don't want to do that. That's not productive. That doesn't grow the local assembly. That extinguishes its passion, its flame, its spirit. We don't want to do that. So, Halloween, as Christians, can we participate in its seasonal activities? Yes. Are there boundaries to those activities? Yes. Should we keep things decent and proper and upright? Most certainly. If you seek a practical application or an example, me and my family, what we do, our children dress up as decent creatures, if you will, and they will eat a bit of treats today. We do not door knock. We don't go trick-or-treating out there, though I have, and we have no breach of conscience for brethren who do go out there and trick-or-treat. We simply do not. The purpose is, of course, safety nowadays for us as overprotecting parents. But we will have activities this day. We will have treats together. We might watch a few spooky movies, decent spooky movies. Okay? And we will speak of these things. And we will recognize that there is liberty in Christ to practice certain things. But there are boundaries we must honor. We must not breach those boundaries and become guilty or falling prey to, well, what the world falls prey to. It's the same with all holidays. We do the same with birthdays, with wearing wedding rings, everything. If we succumb to the fear of our environment, we will suffocate and no longer be productive. The conclusion or the end result to spiritual weakness and binding law where law is not to be bound, if you follow down that dark path to where it leads, I assure you, you will find yourself naked under the bed, shivering and scared and never coming out. That's where it leads. Really. We are not of this world, this fallen way. We don't participate in their lawlessness, but we are still walking on this earth, among them all. And for some of us, there's a lot more of them all around us than in certain other locations of the world. So we must find a bridge. And to that end, it is pleasurable. to have the freedom of Christ to enjoy family and meal. Really. The colors, the candles, the lights, the entertainment of it all, the family moments, the warmness of it, the element of it. There's nothing sinful therein. Can we turn something decent into something sinful? Absolutely. And we should not do that. But therein, of course, the session in its conclusion. Friends, I truly appreciate your kind interaction with it. Your comments are wonderful. I'll be reading into all of them. If you certainly are tuning in, please view the entire session before formulating a thought or a concern to it, so that you are well versed in what it is we have said and how we have said it and what we have shared. And find peace in Christ. Find peace in Christ. Please consider sharing this episode far and wide. Perhaps others out there would find use with it. It may help their faith, right? It may give them a balance and a how should I say, a peaceful thought. Perhaps they were burdened with the uncertainties of Halloween, and maybe they would find a peaceful ease to their conscience. It was for me. It did for me. When I studied this in depth and experienced it throughout the years in my faith, when I finally was capable of letting go the fear and understanding God's balance and liberty with holidays and Christian participation, we became so peaceful with it. It's like, oh, okay. Maybe others out there would warmly welcome such a session. So please consider sharing it on your social media platforms. And if you haven't yet, consider liking the page, subscribing to the channel, following the page, and sharing emojis. Interaction like that helps us jump into the algorithm wave and reach others out there. And also, with the opportunity here, as we finish off, please consider supporting. You can send stars here on our Facebook page. 100 stars is $1. You can send some stars. You can sign up to addedsouls.locals.com. You can support our work monthly. You can send a PayPal donation, addedsouls@gmail.com, or you can reach out to us if you would like to have a physical address. And you can have a conversation with me if you seek. We can schedule a phone call, a video chat, email exchange, things like that. It's available to you. Is that good? Friends, stay focused and stay positive. You are loved. You are appreciated. And find the liberty to have a bit of fun today. In Christ, upright, no doubt, but have a bit of fun. Chill, relax. Peace out, dude. I'll be reading the comments soon and replying. Okay? Goodbye.